Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Now we're in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership for TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and bring them on to tell some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I'm thrilled this week to have my friend and former colleague, Jessica McHale, on with me. Jessica, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Hey guys. So, like Todd said, I'm Jessica McHale. I actually had the privilege to work with Todd for 5 years before he went on his little way. I'm currently teaching fifth grade math in Hempstead Elementary, but I have taught junior high, second grade, fourth grade, taught a variety of stuff, and I'm so excited to be here with him today.
Well, Jessica, tell me a little bit about your path into education. When you were growing up, did you know that a teacher was in your path?
Actually, I did. As I can remember all the way back to junior high, saying, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. This is what I want to do with my life. And then in high school, I went to a little bitty school in a town called Snip, Texas. My graduating class was only 32 people. And so in high school, during my free period, because we were all connected in one school, just in a bunch of different hallways, I'd go and I'd volunteer with the kindergarten kids, the pre-K kids, go play with them and all that stuff. And that kind of solidified that I really wanted to do this. But life took a turn. And as I tell everybody, life happened first. And so I got to be a mom first before I went back to school in the 90s to become, well, actually the 2000s, to become an educator. And I actually am glad it went that way. I think it gave me more knowledge and more understanding of kids before I went into the path.
So I want to talk about that a little bit. So tell me about how were you able to balance being a mother and trying to go back to school full time to kind of pursue your dream?
Well, that's part of the reason I waited so long. The dream to be a teacher never went away, especially the more I saw my son struggle in school.
Mhm.
And it wasn't because he couldn't, it was because he was the smart nerd kid. And so it made it really hard for him to get friends and do all that stuff. But by the time he was in junior high, I knew it was old. He was old enough that if I wasn't there every single day for all the school stuff, by that time they're kind of like, okay, mom, stay away. I don't need you anymore. So I waited till junior high, but it was still a struggle because band concerts, all the school stuff. But luckily, I got to work my school around everything and do the hours to where I only did school 2 or 3 days a week and still crammed in 18 hours a semester
Right.
to go. And luckily, my son knew it was for me to be better and to show him to never give up on his dreams either.
Yeah.
And so he was really understanding about it too.
And so when you were going to school to be a teacher, did you know elementary was going to be in your path, or were you feeling more drawn towards the secondary students?
No, 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 no. I love my friends that teach junior high and high school. But I always said I'm too much of a mom. And when you have the occasional kid that gets an attitude and says words they shouldn't say, the mom in me wants to come out. And so I always knew it was elementary. But the funny thing is, I always figured it would be third or fourth grade. That was my goal.
Yeah.
And when I went through student teaching, I spent the semester in a third grade classroom, and that pretty much said, "Ooh, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to go." Um, and then you hired me, and I got a fourth grade position. And I'm like, okay, third, fourth, close enough. We'll do fourth grade, no problem. And that was year one, and absolutely loved all my babies, of which I still stay in contact with quite a few of them, and they're in high school now.
Yeah.
But then when we switched schools, you said, "Hey, you're going to second grade," and I said, "What?" But I taught second grade with you for 4 years. And I got to tell you, each grade that I have taught, junior high choir, junior high theater arts, fourth grade, second grade, now in fifth grade, they all have their pros and cons. And I did teach junior high for a couple of years because that's just the way the path went. And I loved being with them. But elementary is my babies. They're my babies. I like helping them grow and get the ooh and the light bulb moments and everything that goes with it. And that's definitely where I need to be.
Well, you've been teaching close to a decade now. What do you feel like you've learned about yourself in that time?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is year 9. Um, I've learned a lot. When I first started out, the mom in me came out a lot, the yelling and the raising the voice and the, all that stuff. And I've learned that just for so many kids, that's all they get at home is the yelling. And so it absolutely does nothing for you at school. It just turns them off. So I've learned, okay, yelling doesn't work. I've gotten very good with the mom look, of course, because I am a mom. So I usually just give the mom stare, or I've gotten to where I just cross my hands and sit at the front of the room and say, okay, I'll wait. And it's funny when you do that, or when you just quit talking, the kids amongst themselves will go, y'all, she's really mad. Y'all need to stop. And so it's, I've learned that. I've learned different ways to connect with kids. I've brought music into my classroom a lot, as you know, because I love music.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what subject I teach, there's usually, or what's going on in class, there's usually music playing in the background of some sort. And I introduce the kids to all kinds of different genres and cultures of music. And then reading is so important to me. I grew up loving books. I have a ton of books in my room right now behind me on my bookshelf. And even though right now I just teach math, I've learned that kids need someone to gun for them for reading too, and to help them find that book or that genre that they like to get them to read. And so we talk about that in my math class all the time. It's just learning your kids and learning to, you know, what to do with them and how to inspire them. And I've learned a lot of that in the last 9 years.
I love that. And, one of the things I would ask you too is, you've had the opportunity to connect with a lot of fantastic educators. You visited the Ron Clark Academy, and you utilize some social media to connect with people too. And I know one thing that we talk about quite often through these Tell Your Story episodes is that no matter how fantastic you are in the classroom, there are days where that comparison starts to come in, or that you look at what other people are doing or hear about it and you think, well, goodness, am I really that great of a teacher? Or should I be sharing any of this? Or does anybody even care? When those thoughts start to enter your mind, how do you keep doubt from taking root?
It used to happen a lot more often, especially in the first few years that I taught. I'd see what the other teachers were doing and go, oh my God, my room needs to look like that. Or, oh my gosh, I need to teach like that. Or, they're so much better than me. And it was funny because being under you for 5 years, I go, oh my God, Todd likes them so much better than me. But I've kind of found my own path. On days that I'm doubting myself, that I don't so much compare myself to the other teachers anymore,
Yeah.
because I am not like any other teacher. Um, I don't say that with a chip on my shoulder. I say that from learning for 9 years. And actually having people come up to me and go, oh my God, tell me more about your flexible seating. Or, oh my gosh, I know you work with Todd. Tell me about this. Or, so I don't so much compare myself as far as, ooh, they're doing this so much better than me. I look at it now as, what can I learn from that teacher? So like right now, I'm in 5th grade and I'm teaching math. And due to this wonderful pandemic we have going on right now, we don't have STAR this year, but this would have been the first time I've done STAR teaching in 5 years, 6 years. And so that really terrified me going into a STAR subject this year. And my fellow teacher in the other triad, her scores were so much better than mine on our, unit tests and academic targets. And it started creeping in again this year because of that. But instead of looking at, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? I turned it with that flip mindset and said, oh my gosh, what is she doing so much better than I am? What do I need to learn from her?
Right.
And that's really hard for us educators, because we want to be so good at everything all the time.
Right.
But we have to learn that we have to talk to our other educators and learn from them too, because everybody has something to offer you, even if they're a first-year educator or a 20-year educator. We need to be able to learn from them.
And I think that's totally true. I think we can all learn from each other all the time. And it doesn't matter how much experience you have, it's all in your perception. And, something else that I heard you mention that I'd love to kind of dive into a little bit is, that feeling of being different. Whether it's personality, whether it's teaching style, whether it's beliefs in education. I found myself often when I was in the classroom, there were a couple people that I connected with But sometimes it just feels like you're the lone wolf, like you're the only one that, and you feel, and sometimes that can make you feel like you stand out, not in a good way, and that you feel ostracized, or you feel like people are always giving you the side eye or things like that. And that can really start to mess with your confidence as well as an educator, regardless of how great things are going in the classroom, regardless of how the relationships you're building with kids. It can start to make you feel like, goodness gracious, why? Like, I love being unique, but some days I'm tired of being unique. Like, I want to feel like the crowd. How do you keep that at bay too?
Um, Honestly, and there are a lot of days like that. I am a very strong personality. I am very loud. Um, this is probably the quietest Todd has ever seen me, or the stillest. Um, but it's one of those things. I do it for the kids. Well, I say that growing up, I never fit in the box because I was different. I've always been different. I've always been unique. I've been a little bit of a nerd, but a little bit of a theatrical person.
Mm-hmm.
I do theater on the side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not afraid to get up in front of 1,000 people and
No, you
sing.
are not.
Um, there's not a lot that I'm afraid of. And part of that is because my dad raised me that you never met a stranger. My dad was real outgoing too. And so it started out, it was like, this is just who I am, especially right now. For those of you that don't know, I am 45 years old and proud of it. And I'm kind of to the point now of this is how God made me. But there are still those days that I have teachers that look at me like, what is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Our schools, part of the reason I loved working for you so much in our school district was the dress up days and the fun days and the stuff that we could, because that is me, like to a
Yeah.
T. Um, I love my administration at the school I'm at now. We don't do stuff like that as often, but we do have days. Like we just recently had a rodeo roundup for
Mm-hmm.
reading during the beginning of livestock show before they shut it down. And the thing was, you could dress up. Well, my teammates know anytime that there is a dress up day, McHale's going all in. And I still do that. For Halloween, I was a minion with the hat and the shorts and the gloves and the whole 9 yards. For the rodeo roundup day, I was in cut off overalls and boots and freckles painted on my face and ponytail or pigtails. Um, and now I do it not only to be able to still express who I am, because that is so important. I God's made me this way and I believe that and I'm going to be proud of it. The other part is to show the kids it's okay to be silly and a
Yeah.
goof and unique and be different, because that's how you are made and you should never be ashamed of it.
And I think that's a great point. And that's one thing I would often remind myself in those moments is I would look at it as maybe I can use this as a moment with my students to show that, you're not always going to fit in. You're not always going to have people like you. And that doesn't mean that you are any less of a person or you're any you don't deserve to belong, but that just may mean that in that moment, in that group, that's not your spot, and that's okay. We don't all have to have a spot all the time. But I heard you mention something as well through there that I'd love to dive into. Is you mentioned your dad, and I know from my relationship with you that your dad played a very heavy role in your life. Y'all were very close. It was a lot like my mother and mine, and you also lost your dad, and I know it played a big role in your story and the woman you've become. And so tell me a little bit about that experience and how that happened.
Um, oh gosh, 7 years ago. Um, for those that don't know, and quite a few of my close friends, like know the story. My father was murdered. Um, Growing up, um, dad was a huge role. He
Mhm.
took me. He didn't treat me different because I was a girl. If anything, he loved me more because of it. He'd take me hunting with him. We'd go fishing. We'd do whatever, and that was dad. He always wanted what was best for me. And so I was so thankful that he got to see me finally graduate college.
Mhm.
And so that was in 2012, in May. We lost him in September of 2012. It was a next door neighbor. It was an ongoing feud and dispute. Um, and after I lost him, and I have to tell y'all that are listening now, I heard the gunshot. It was on our property. Um, and he was a dog trainer. And so I was used to hearing what you call popper gunshots. And I knew that that one was different. Something in me knew that that one was different. And that was a very trying time for my family. I had to be the strong one. My brother, who was even closer to my dad than I was, is 5 years younger than me. He completely broke down. Of course,
Right.
mom broke down. My dad's parents. So I had to be the strong one.
Mhm.
And after about 2 weeks, after the funeral and the services and everything, um, I could hear dad in the back of my mind saying, "You have to go back to work. You have to, do something." The weird thing is, God always has reasons and God always knows our plan before we do. I graduated in May. I didn't get a job for the 2012, 2013 year, and I could never figure out why I didn't get hired at the beginning
Right.
of my career. And when what happened to dad happened, I was like, oh, there's the reason I didn't get that contract at the beginning of the year, because I would have had to take off for several weeks at the very
Yeah.
beginning of the year, and that wouldn't have been fair to my kids. But I could hear my dad saying, go back. And so that's what I did. Um, since I've lost dad and started my teaching career, um, I share part of the story with my kids that I teach every year. Now, I don't go into the details, of course, because, anywhere from second to fifth graders don't need to know where my dad was shot or how it all happened or anything like that. But I do tell my kids every year that I know what it's like to lose somebody very
Mhm.
close. I do share with them that he was murdered. Even my second graders knew that he was murdered. Um, and we go into a small detail of what exactly that means. Um, but I tell them how that made me a stronger person
Mhm.
and how I know my dad is with me and keeps telling me to go on. And I share that story with my kids because every one of our kids in the districts that I've worked for have lost someone,
Mhm.
whether it's due to violence like murder, like my dad, whether it's due to drugs or alcohol, and their family member, their mom or their dad or someone close to them is in prison or had to move or whatever. So many of our kids go through so much stuff that we don't know, that I feel, even though that was a real tragic thing for me, and it's still, I miss my daddy every single day, just like
Mhm.
you miss your mom, and I loved your mom.
Mhm.
Um, I feel that it brings me closer to my kids
Mhm.
because it gives us that connection and that talking point, so that if something does happen to them, even if it's not that tragic, just, mom and dad are fighting and I had to sleep in the car last night with moms, just something like that,
Mhm.
it opens them up more to want to talk to me because they know I'm a real person, that I have stuff that I've gone through too.
Well, and your story is it's one of those that it's a loss, but it's unexpected. It's very quickly, and those are always a little different. People who go through loss where they lose somebody, that's a very drawn out thing. That's another kind of pain. And losing somebody unexpected is a different kind of pain. It's not one is more than the other or anything, but they're all a little bit different the way we choose to grieve and deal with it. Throughout that whole circumstance, did you find yourself growing closer to your mother? Because I know you and your mother have quite a strong relationship too. Did that help bring y'all even closer?
It really did. Mom and I had a decent relationship, but mother daughter things. After we lost dad, um, and I went through a divorce after all that, and just a bunch of life happened.
Mhm.
Um, it drew mom and I really, really a lot closer. Um, After my son graduated, I graduated in 2012. My son graduated high school a year later in 2013. And decided at the age of 18 that he was ready to be a man and move out. And, moms have problems with that, but I said, okay. And he left. And so it was just me and it was mom.
Mhm.
And we lived in two separate houses with two separate sets of bills and everything. And mom said, that's stupid. Um, for us to be paying all that money and it's just us in each one of these houses. And so mom and I became roommates
Mhm.
after all this happened. As a matter of fact, we're still roommates. Um, and it's brought her and I a lot closer together. It brought my faith. into my life a lot more. And within the last year, it's brought mom back to God a lot
Right.
more too. And so I am, out of all of the heartache, I am thankful for that, that I have that relationship now with mom that I didn't have before all this happened.
And that's one of those things that when you look at situations like this, it's like in the moment, you can't see the good, you can't see where it's going to be leading to. But then there's little reminders down the road that says, you know what? I'm only here because I went through that. And even though that doesn't make me any happier that happened, at least I have some understanding now of what it was leading to and who it created. And so I appreciate you kind of sharing some of that, because I know it's never easy to share and it's important. And I know you're an open book, but that doesn't make it any easier when those kind of moments come up. Well, Jessica, I think the question I always love to end all of these tell your story conversations on is there's lots of people who listen to these, whether they're educators or they have some other kind of career, their parents, their whatever. When you think about everything going on in your life, in this world, if there was one thing that you wish more people knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
Embrace everybody's uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
um, Everybody is unique. None of us are the same person. We could have been raised in identical houses and we're still a different person because of who we are. And I really wish, especially right now with everything that's going on, and the world kind of being able to be still a little bit more, and kind of reflect, and do everything that we're having to do during this corona thing, is just embrace the uniqueness that everybody has to offer. You don't have to always agree with everybody. You don't always have to like everybody. Just, respect them and see what makes them the unique person that they are, and get to know them, because some people that I've looked at in the past before I've discovered all of this and gone, "Oh my gosh, really?" And then I got to know them, and it was like, holy cow, the stuff that they know, or the stories they can tell me, whether it's to enhance me as a person or me as a teacher, or whatever, is just unbelievable. And people are so afraid of the unknown, and the uniqueness of people, that if you would just take a second and realize that you're not really afraid, that fear is your reaction, that you're just not sure of what's going to happen. If you would take a moment and breathe and go ahead and be brave and dive through, that person's uniqueness might just be what you exactly need at that moment in time.
I love that. That is the perfect way to end this conversation. Jessica, thank you so much for making some time today. I know you're an open book, but I appreciate you coming on Tell Your Story.
Thanks, Todd. I'm so
And thank
glad
you.
you invited me.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get them, they're there. I hope today's conversation with Jessica has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.